Well, good morning, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here and talk to you about our new Center of Excellence, the FAA Center of Excellence. Get rid of this. Center of Excellence for Alternative Jet Fuels and Environment. We tried really hard to make an acronym out of alternative jet fuels and environment and couldn't come up with one. So ASCENT is an acronym for Aviation Sustainability Center. And the FAA liked it, and you can see the symbol, or the folks put together is down the bottom. I like the wings and so on. It all makes good sense to me. So that's what ASCENT is, and I want to underscore that it is an FAA Center of Excellence. Those, some of you probably know what those are. That's the way the FAA works with consortia of universities to fund research. We have experience, both the University of Washington and WSU leads centers. University of Washington leads AMTAS, the Composites Center, and WSU is a member of that. And WSU leads the ASCENT Center, and the University of Washington is a partner in that. So we work together, except for the one time a year when we're out in that football stadium. So ASCENT is an FAA Center of Excellence, and it's led by WSU, and the co-lead is Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And my co-director is listed there, John Hansman. I imagine that those in the Aero department from University of Washington know John. He's been pretty active around aviation operations research for a long time. So just a little background as to why the FAA, at the request of Congress, put together this Center of Excellence. And in the FAA, there is the Office of Environment and Energy. And that office has been very involved in the development of not only regulations, but processes and procedures and so forth, and to facilitate the research to help the aviation industry, the civilian sector specifically, to be able to grow and advance while maintaining or reducing its environmental footprint. Some numbers on the left there that indicate why this is important. The aviation sector is about a $1.3 trillion activity in the United States. The manufacturing sector associated with aviation produces the largest trade surplus of any component of the U.S. manufacturing industry. There's 10.2 million jobs associated with aviation. The next bullet is staggering to me. There's $1 trillion invested in aircraft in the civilian aviation world, and any fuel that we might develop has to be able to drop in. They're not going to change that fleet to achieve environmental sustainability through biofuels. And some people have asked, well, why don't you electrify airplanes? And I don't hear the chuckles from this group that I expected, but I think we all realize that the energy density is just not there for any practical purposes, at least presently. So aviation has some environmental challenges. And this center deals with those challenges. It's much more than alternative jet fuels. Let me underscore that. And in fact, this center is the successor to a previous Center of Excellence. That one had the acronym PARTNER and was led by MIT. And a lot of those activities continue in this new center. And I don't know if any of you have been connected with PARTNER, but I imagine many of you have read some of the reports to know the kind of work that was done there. So the environmental challenges facing sustainable aviation are noise, air quality, water quality, energy usage, and climate change. Aviation does not have a sustainable source of energy for flight It's utterly dependent upon jet fuel, which presently comes from fossil carbon. And the environmental impacts from aviation could pose a critical constraint on capacity growth. Certain airsheds in the United States are already putting restrictions on aviation, such as Southern California. And there are other factors that play into that. So with all of these drivers, it's important that aviation be able to move ahead and do the research. So the Office of Environment and Energy within the FAA, and obviously with the administrator's signature, developed Destination 2025. And the desired outcomes of that document are to develop and operate an aviation system that reduces aviation's environmental and energy impacts to a level that does not constrain its growth and is a model for sustainability. Some outcomes associated with that, if we dig down into it a little bit: reduce the number of people exposed to noise around U.S. airports in absolute terms, irrespective of the growth of the industry and the number of flights, and provide additional measures to protect public health and welfare and our national resources. Another outcome is to achieve an absolute reduction of significant air quality, health, and welfare impacts attributable to aviation, notwithstanding aviation growth. Think about engine emissions and other things that are components of the aviation enterprise on the ground as well as in the air. Improve the national airspace system energy efficiency by 2% per year, and develop and deploy alternative jet fuels for commercial aviation. Certainly everyone here that has been following what's going on in aviation knows that the biggest operating cost they have is their fuel, and small percentage changes in efficiency are hugely important to the industry. And then another one to highlight is to limit the impact of aircraft carbon dioxide emissions on the global climate by achieving carbon neutral growth by 2020 compared to 2005, and net reductions of the climate impact from all aviation emissions over the longer term, meaning by 2050. That's a significant and difficult goal. So this Center of Excellence is tasked to meet these environmental energy challenges that are confronting aviation, and it follows what the FAA calls its 5-pillar strategy, and that's on the left. Better scientific understanding and improved tools for integrated environmental analysis, mature new aircraft technologies, advanced development of alternative aviation fuels, explore and demonstrate clean, quiet, and energy-efficient operating procedures, and then policies, environmental standards, market-based measures, and environmental management system. So the FAA is pushing forward on following those strategies, and they issued a solicitation in, would have been December of 2012 for the Center of Excellence. On the right are the required 10 research topics that this center must address. And they break down roughly 50-50 into alternative jet fuels and environmental issues. And feedstock development and processing, regional supply and refining infrastructure, environmental benefits analysis, aircraft component deterioration and wear, and fuel performance testing. Some of those existed in the previous Center of Excellence partner, but not all of them. All of the environmental topics did exist in the previous Center of Excellence, and you'll see them there: noise, emissions, technology assessment, operations, and then modeling and analysis. So the award was announced September 13th of 2013, and our application has a team of 16 universities, and of course they have the potential to engage other universities, and an absolute requirement to engage commercial firms and also work with other government laboratories to conduct research and education. The FAA, I want to underscore the education. The FAA is really concerned about the aging of the aviation workforce, be they engineers or what have you, and they see this as a primary way of getting people to go get their degrees in areas that pertain to the FAA and maybe end up working with them, the FAA or the aviation industry in general. So shortly after the announcement, prior to the end of September of 2013, cooperative agreements were put in place with each of the 16 schools. The center is funded initially for 5 years, and it'll be and then it's renewable for another 5 years, for a total of 10 years. And the funding is listed as at least $4 million annually. That doesn't seem like a lot when you spread it over 16 schools. And the real story is there's a lot more money there than that minimum that they said they would be funding. So here's the a map that shows the universities and our partners. And I'll talk more about the partners in a minute. So it's WSU in the lead with MIT, and and John and I break down the technical responsibilities. I'm the technical lead for the biofuel component, and he's the technical lead for the environment component. And then you'll see the list of other universities there. Many of the universities in the team were part of the previous partner Center of Excellence, and were brought into this. And then we added to it the missing capabilities to make it strong in the area of alternative jet fuels. And you'll notice, I don't know how clearly it shows up, but some of the schools that are in there that have an asterisk by them are the major institutions in the United States who have been successful in getting USDA and other funding for biofuels. And so we have, of course, WSU has one of those, as does the University of Washington, Oregon State, Penn State, Purdue, Illinois, Champaign-Urbana, and Tennessee. So there's significant biofuels capability there. The nature of these centers, it's mandatory that you have an advisory committee to advise the activities of the center and to form partnerships in conducting research. We were very pleased with the response that we got from industry, and you'll see a list there of the companies and other organizations that signed on to be part of our center at the time of application. Since the award's been announced, others have approached us about joining. It's really important and exciting, first of all, for relevance, but secondly, something that I haven't mentioned yet, the FAA requires dollar-for-dollar matching funds from non-federal sources. So that $4 million is actually $8 million if you count the match, and companies can provide it. Universities, of course, do some in-kind. And an interesting twist on matching, those of you that have done federal grants that require matching, this is unusual. If we partner with Canadians or the British or whoever in another country and they're working on the same objectives, none of that money has to flow here, but they'll count that as match. So aviation being the international activity that it is with significant research capabilities in other places, we are spending time working with these others. There's some history of the Canadians working with the FAA in terms of actually sending Canadian money to the FAA and then to our center, which I find very interesting. I'm not sure that any other country does that, but we'll certainly be welcome to have that. But anyway, these are the teams, and you'll see there's airframe manufacturers, engine manufacturers, airports, biofuels companies. We also have national laboratories on our list. As we submitted the application, we were required to document that we had the expertise to address all 10 areas. So this is subject to modification, but this is what we had at the time it was put in, of where an institution could document that it has significant strength in one of those areas. And we define that strength as having a minimum of 3 research successful faculty members working on the topic and having the appropriate infrastructure to do the research. So those little black boxes are where we considered for the application there to be significant strength. It's arguable, many places have people that could handle other things, one-off faculty members and so on. But that's what we turned in at the time. And so you'll see, for those in the room here, of course, UW and WSU, where we put that together. Here's the organization. Got to have an org chart. If you haven't worked with the FAA before, it's a different experience. That once you have the award, they work very closely with you. And so I wouldn't say daily, but almost daily contact with Jim Heilman, the chief scientist in the Office of Environment and Energy. He's the program manager. And then the administrative block there is John Hansman and myself. But there's some others that are in here that are important. To the right on the top there, you see industry, federal agencies, and stakeholder liaison. We have John Gardner, who used to be a vice president here at WSU. He's with Bainbridge Graduate Institute now, lives and works over in the Seattle area. John has an incredible set of relationships around aviation and biofuels. And he's just great at working with companies and so forth. So John is our industry and stakeholder liaison. And then at PNNL, we have John Holliday, who's the director of their biomass program, who is functioning as liaison with all the federal laboratories for us. Another great resource. Below that is the advisory committee. You saw the list previously of all of the companies and organizations. And I should also mention that there are citizen stakeholder groups in there as well. There's an organization of citizens concerned about noise. They're represented, and other such things. And then on the other side, as you would expect, outreach and communications, and then University Partner Steering Committee. That's the quote-unquote PIs. We have a lead faculty member at each of the 16 schools, so that's who that group is. And below are the partners again. And so this has moved on. We started on September 13th of last year. What's happened so far is we met with all of the university PIs in December in DC. All the meetings are in DC. And that got held up because the government shut down. So we got off to a little bit of a slow start. In January, we were participated in the Office of Science, Technology, Policy Jet Fuels Workshop. Then we at the Commercial Aviation Alternative Fuels Initiative General Meeting. Then in March, we had the very first meeting of our advisory board in a room probably bigger than this. We had about 130 people there in DC with lots of excitement and expectations. The nice thing about having it in DC is we had very good representation from federal agencies, not just everybody from the FAA, but we had NASA, Department of Energy, Department of Defense, Defense Logistics Agency, EPA, and so forth. One of the things we're trying to do in this center is to bring in resources from other federal agencies to augment and hopefully multiply substantially the money that the FAA has. The idea is to market this as a pre-vetted group of researchers that have particular expertise. And in a minute, I'll tell you how the proposal process works, but we would hope that streamlined process would work with these other agencies. And so now we're in the midst of project solicitation and development, and then we'll have another advisory committee meeting in October. I want to talk briefly about the projects, because I imagine with all that background, most of the faculty in the room and company representatives are saying, how can I get a piece of this? So there's the, on the right-hand column are the solicitation areas, 1 through 10. On the left are the topics as the FAA currently groups them. And you can see how many requests have been sent out. Now, let me explain briefly how the process works. The FAA office will put together a roughly 2-page document of what they want. And that solicitation gets sent out to the lead member of each university, who then is supposed to distribute that through whatever mechanism works at that university to the faculty there so they can participate. And then there's about a 2 or 3 week period for teams to coalesce and for people to put together a brief notice of intention that would outline what they want to do and who they'd be working with and so forth. That comes back and goes to the FAA, and then the particular department manager for that research project that's going to be funding it takes a look at that, confers with the chief scientist, and then they either make they make a decision. The decision can be one of a number. One decision is they didn't like any of them, but that, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. Another decision is one of the notices from the university is so spectacular that that's exactly what they want, and they just start working with that one. Another possibility is that 2 of them are really good, and they see benefits for them working together, and so they'll come back and coalesce a team from those. And a final possibility is to fund more than one, assuming the objectives don't overlap very much. So that's how that process works. Once that decision has been made, then the department manager, who will be the project manager, will work very closely with the university faculty to flesh out the details of the project. And then it'll get funded. Now, the nice thing about this is, you know, it goes very fast, and the application doesn't take a lot of time, and each of the 16 universities already has a master contract in place. So all they have to do to get the money is a fairly short addendum to that contract. The university puts the faculty members through their university will submit a scope of work, and then the addendum is cut and the money flows. So it's intended to be expeditious. So that's how it works, and I want to point your attention to www.ascent.aero, and that will be the website. It's currently up. We have a placeholder screen on there right now, and we're working on the details for that.